Hey, welcome to Breaking the News on KARE 11 Plus. Today, we want to talk about money. Thanks for joining us here. I'm Janice Shortle. And when I talk about money in the state of the economy, there's really one person I tend to lean on, and that is Chris Farrell. He is a senior economist for Minnesota Public Radio News and a good friend. We've talked many times over my 20 plus years here at KARE 11 when it comes to all things money. Hey, Chris, how you doing today?
It's great to be on the show with you again.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's great to have you. Now, I just want to talk about all things money. And what I want to start with is something actually you taught me about. And it's the University of Michigan's monthly survey that talks about kind of how we feel about the economy. And right now, it's looking gloomy. People are not feeling good when you look at any measuring stick in the economy. And why does it matter how people feel about it?
Well, because when people are feeling bad about the economy, they get more cautious. They get more worried. You're perhaps thinking about, we really might need to replace that car. But all of a sudden, when you're feeling bad about the economy, you go, well, can we keep this car going for another year or so? And maybe we're not going to go out to dinner as often as we've been doing, or, we're just going to pull back because we don't know what's going to happen with the economy. And so consumer sentiment really does matter. And we have seen essentially a plunge in consumer sentiment, that people are more nervous about what's going to happen with the economy, and that leads to caution. There's some conversation about recession. I think that's going a little bit too fast, but definitely the consumer is worried about the future direction of the economy.
Yeah, I think you and I have talked about that before. It's actually, if you were to just look at data right now, and sometimes economists like this do this. They say, actually, things are really good. Biden's team was trying to get, Bidenomics out there saying everything's fine. Why is everybody complaining? But the sentiment wasn't there. And from what folks like you have taught me is if the sentiment is not there, it can actually be a drag on the economy.
It can be a drag in the economy. And then look, why isn't the sentiment there? I mean, one of the reasons why the sentiment isn't there is the whole discussion about tariffs. Tariffs are on, tariffs are off, tariffs are back on, tariffs are being targeted here, tariffs are being targeted there. Next week, we have what President Trump has called Liberation Day, where we're going to get a lot more in tariffs. And this has really confused a lot of people. It's made people worried about prospects for higher prices. And you mentioned the previous election. I mean, one of the things we really learned from that election is that people hate inflation. That's across the board. Everybody hates inflation. And so I think there was a sentiment, and you don't have to believe what was said on the campaign trail by President Trump, that he was going to bring down inflation from day one. But you had an optimism. I think a lot of people had an optimism that, inflation was continuing to go down. Maybe it's even going to go down a little bit more because of some of the deregulatory moves that the president-elect had talked about, and now president. But people are now saying, with these tariffs, and probably the best example is that's out there is cars. A lot of economists, you've probably seen the numbers that cars are going to go up by maybe $6,000, $7,000. Of course, it all depends on what happens. And there was an article in today's Wall Street Journal, I believe it was, talking about the $30,000, the less than $30,000 car is going to be increasingly hard to find. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to be thinking about. So that I think that these tariffs and the back and forth on the policy, that's really starting to weigh on people.
Right, because on any number of issues, people just are uncomfortable going back and forth. And you talked about tariffs, and that's what's leading what we have seen in the stock market, right? Today it's down hundreds of points, and tomorrow it might go up again. And just that uncertainty, no matter your party, is really hard on people to plan for the future. Maybe they put off that vacation. You talked about cars. I think one of the effects that could happen in the next coming days, I've been seeing some auto magazines tweeting out today that they expect this weekend to be a boon in terms of people shopping for cars because they're not sure if they're going to go up by 10 grand.
I think that's right. And also a lot of the automakers, they are carrying more inventory in anticipation of more tariffs. So, and as you'd mentioned, we're really not seeing it in the numbers. But if you think about the stock market's not the economy, but the stock market is a forward indicator. It's a forward-looking indicator. investors are trying to figure out, where are we going? Where's the economy going? Where are corporate profits going? So the stock market being down, and then the sentiment indicators being down, and then the latest data that we got on inflation, it's a little more stubborn. So I think altogether, whether you're a consumer, you and me, we're consumers, or you're running a business. If you're running a business right now and you're thinking about investing, maybe opening a plant, maybe opening a new office, maybe doing a little bit of expansion, are you thinking just like the consumer's thinking, hey, maybe I should just wait a little bit, maybe just hold off and see what's going on? And one impact that I want to mention that I think is important to watch, now we'll get next Friday, we get the employment report, and that'll be a good indicator what's going on, because right now, one way of thinking about the labor market is it's frozen. So people who have jobs, they don't want to leave their job right now. I mean,
Right.
they got a job. They're not so sure they're going to get a job. If you're looking for a job, companies have really slowed down on their hiring. They're still hiring, but at a much slower level. So thinking about the job market is it's frozen. So if you have a frozen job market, and then you look at the federal layoffs that are going on, Starbucks, Southwest Airlines. I mean, these are brand name companies and brand name institutions laying off people. And in a normal market, we say, look, a lot of these people would get absorbed.
Right.
But right now, this labor market and the way companies are acting, I think they're going to be much more wary than in the past about hiring right away.
Right, so paying attention to those job numbers, because there's a lag between what we see on the news and what you and I do about layoffs or restrictions, and then what reflects in the job numbers. So that's certainly something to think about. I want to ask you big picture, if I can, about tariffs, Chris. So the argument, and you referenced the Wall Street Journal, I read it too, because they know economics, right? And their editorial team has kind of looked at this tariff thing big picture. And their editorial team leans conservative and is saying, I'm not sure the result is going to be what this administration may be thinking it's going to be. That this idea that, let's take autos, for example, if we tariff all of it and try to get companies to build in the United States and make everything here, that will win the day 5-10 years from now. But in your opinion, can the American economy withstand that weight, if that's the end game?
So I don't think it can stand the weight. And that's not just, Chris Farrell saying, I don't think we can stand the weight. Paul Krugman. So opposite end from the Wall Street Journal editorial page that you mentioned. The Wall Street Journal editorial page, I believe they called tariffs the dumbest trade in history.
They do.
Then you read Paul Krugman, and he did the results of a survey of economists, and it's a majority. It's way up there. It's not quite 100%. Nothing's ever 100%, but it's getting awfully close there. The tariffs are bad. The tariffs don't work. These big universal tariffs that are being discussed. So sometimes you do something for a particular industry, or you look at a particular sector and you might think about tariffs, but not these sort of broad-based tariffs. So overall, yes, some industries will benefit. How are they going to benefit? The tariffs give them the freedom to raise their prices. So they're going to raise their prices. That's one of the effects. But a lot of companies are going to get hurt because they consume the goods that are being imported. So I don't know about you. I can speak only for myself. I think craft beer was one of the great innovations of the past, 3 decades. I mean, it's been really remarkable to just look at the rise of the craft beer industry. Well, the craft beer industry uses a lot of aluminum. And we have tariffs on aluminum that raises the cost of craft beer. And if you look at most of those businesses, they're not running on they have pretty thin margins, right? So a big shift in their cost, they've got to pass that on to the consumer right away. So when we're thinking about tariffs, a lot of times people go, we want fair competition. We keep some of those foreign competitors out of the country, then we'll have a better domestic market. But a lot of the beneficiaries are going to raise their prices, so everyone gets higher prices. And a lot of companies who use the stuff that's imported, they got to pass that, at least some of that cost, on the consumer. And a lot of businesses that have to pass that cost on right away are smaller businesses.
Makes me want to have a craft beer right now, Chris Farrell. We should have really
Yes,
thought
it
about
does,
that before
doesn't
we
it?
started. My goodness gracious. All right. One of the things you talked about is the jobs report. I want to talk about work because that's something
Yep.
that you and I have also talked about over the years. And making news in recent days in Minnesota is Governor Walz issuing an order saying state workers, the remainder of which that are on remote work, have until starting June 1st, they're going to have to come to work in the office half the time. So you got labor unions representing these workers who are, for lack of a better term, pissed off, saying they didn't get a heads up about this. They don't want to do it. They're going to hear from the union about this. They may have a walkout, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have the other side of the argument in that innovation to happen, collaboration to happen, needs to happen in person. Most of the private sector has already come back to the workplace for the majority of the time. So how do you find a balance here, and why so much consternation on this last group of employees?
Yeah, I don't know about how, the internal dynamics and how it was sold internally and whether that was done poorly or not. I don't have a judgment on that. But we really have moved toward a hybrid work world when it comes to the office. So Nicholas Bloom, he's economist at Stanford University, and he's been studying remote work, I think, for the past 20 years. And if you remember, we go back to before COVID. We're back in 2018, 2019. The image of remote work was really bad. Companies didn't like it. There was this image that if you were doing remote work, you were shirking, you were in the pool, you were having your craft beer, and, management wanted you there in the office. COVID sort of destroyed a lot of those assumptions.
Yeah.
And when we look at productivity in remote versus in the office, productivity is pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. If you have the opportunity to work remotely, retention drops, retention improves by about a third, which is, really lowers the cost to companies. And what I think we've moved toward is this hybrid world. 2 days, 3 days a week where you're in the office because, there are real benefits to being in the office. Think about the young workers who are getting hired, right, or someone gets a promotion or they move to a different part of the company. So there are a lot of benefits toward being in the office. There are a lot of benefits also, if I speak about my work, there are some days where I just want to not be around people because I got to write these scripts or got to write these columns and I just want to write. And it makes more sense for me to put myself in an environment where I'm just by myself doing that work. And so I think the hybrid is the way to go. And there's a Gallup poll that said of jobs that can be done remotely. So the Gallup term was remote capable. About half the workforce is now doing that kind of a job. So if you have the opportunity, you're doing hybrid work. So my feeling is what the governor said is this is where the world is moving toward. Mm-hmm. And the world is moving toward a hybrid world, and that's good for the organizations, it's good for the state government organizations, and it's good for the workers, and frankly, it's good for the taxpayers. So let's enjoy this hybrid work world.
Yeah, a little bit of both and. Let's end on that positive sentiment that both things can be true at the same time. Chris Farrell, always a pleasure talking to you about all things money. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching us on Breaking the News on KARE 11 Plus. You can see the show on the TV every day about 6:38 to 7 o'clock, and we'll catch you back here whenever we have a topic that needs exploring. I'm Jana Shortle. Thanks for watching.